News alert breaking just moments ago. President Trump wrapping up a huge raucous rally in Kentucky. We'll have all the highlights tonight. Don Jr. will be here talking about how the left in America has been triggered. And the president raised a good question. What if Hunter's name were Don Jr.? Also, Congressman Devin Nunes and Congressman Gates will be here tonight. And also tonight, I will address all of you fake news people, your insane story about yours truly, because I do my job that you guys don't do because you're too lazy and corrupt. But first, we begin with the massive breaking development from investigative reporter John Solomon. Well, creepy, sleepy, crazy Uncle Joe Biden is in serious hot water. We were right. According to Solomon, Hunter Biden was, in fact, peddling his influence, and we now have access to damning new documents tonight showing how Hunter's company, Ukrainian oil and gas giant Burisma Holdings, they used Hunter Biden, the vice president's son at the time, the guy in charge of Ukraine at the time, to try and win special favor from the Obama administration. Look at this. February 2016, just 1 month before then Vice President Biden leveraged $1 billion of your tax dollars in U.S. aid to force Ukraine to fire a prosecutor who was investigating Burisma Holdings and his son. The millions of dollars that his son was paid with zero experience in energy, Ukraine, gas and oil. A representative for the company was communicating with the Obama State Department, we learned tonight. According to these newly unearthed emails, courtesy of John Solomon and a Freedom of Information Act request, the Burisma rep was lobbying the Obama administration to end corruption allegations against their company, even noting that, quote, 2 high-profile U.S. citizens are affiliated with the company, including Hunter Biden as a board member. Now, that's just 1 month later, the vice president tells the country of Ukraine. Why would a vice president of the United States ever want a prosecutor of Ukraine fired? Fire the prosecutor in 6 hours, or you won't get the $1 billion. Don't believe me? Call Obama. That is a Joe quid pro quo bragging about it on tape. And for good measure, let's remind you of him bragging in his own words. Take a look.
We're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired.
Son of a B. Quid pro quo Joe. That is called a shakedown. And calling the compromised, corrupt coward and congenital liar Adam Schiff, hey, Adam, there is your quid pro quo on tape. He's bragging about it. Now, Burisma name drops Hunter Biden to the State Department of Obama, and poof, a month later, the prosecutor investigating Hunter Biden and that company paying him millions with no background or experience after Biden leveraged $1 billion of our tax dollars. He's done. Did Hunter have experience with oil and gas? No. Experience with energy? None. Did he have experience in Ukraine? None. But it was his father who was the second most powerful elected official in the United States of America, the vice president of the United States, and in charge of American policy in Ukraine. Now, that's called, well, pick your choice. Influence peddling, buying favor. What other possible reason could there be? A vice president demanding a Ukrainian prosecutor being fired or you don't get the $1 billion. Plain and simple. Even Hunter Biden could not deny this obvious fact. This has to be the dumbest interview I've ever seen a 49-year-old give in my life. Watch this.
You didn't have any extensive knowledge about natural gas or Ukraine itself, though.
No, but I think that I had as much knowledge as anybody else that was on the board, if not more.
In the list that you gave me of the reasons why you're on that board, you did not list the fact that you were the son of the vice president.
Yeah, no.
What role do you think that played?
I think that it is impossible for me to be on any of the boards that I just mentioned without saying that I'm the son of the vice president of the United States.
If your last name wasn't Biden, do you think you would have been asked to be on the board of Burisma?
I don't know. Probably not. I don't think that there's a lot of things that would have happened in my life that if my last name wasn't Biden.
No with no experience, probably not. They probably wouldn't have paid him millions and millions of dollars. Looks like Burisma's significant multi-million-dollar investment, though, in Hunter Biden paid off in a very big way. He also got, by the way, Hunter, $1.5 billion private equity deal with the Bank of China 10 days after flying with his dad to China. Zero experience in China. We can't find any experience in private equity either. Would any other American get this deal? No. This stinks to high heaven. Joe 30330 says, oh, they never discussed this? Really? If you didn't discuss it, why did you leverage $1 billion tax dollars to fire the guy investigating your son? I don't believe you. And it doesn't end there. Another email shows Hunter Biden scored a one-on-one meeting with then Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken just 1 month after starting his cushy gig with Burisma Holdings in 2015. And in March of 2016, we learned tonight Hunter's business partner and fellow Burisma board member Devon Archer scored a meeting with Secretary of State John Kerry. It's so nice to know people in high places. This is the behind-the-scenes look. It reveals a level of sick nepotism and influence peddling. It is repulsive and should disgust every American. The American people get it. The media mob, all they do is run defense for the Bidens. That's equally repulsive and sick, and it shows you who the media is. Now, President raised this in a speech tonight. Would they make these excuses up if it was Donald Trump Jr. with no experience being paid millions? I doubt it. And according to Fox News legal analyst, pay close attention, and Greg Jarrett will join us in a minute, Biden's actions could be criminal. Greg Jarrett, look at your screen. He has identified the laws that seem extremely applicable to all of us. Oh, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, 15 U.S.C. 78, quote, it is illegal for a U.S. person to coerce or influence through bribery or extortion a foreign nation into taking action, firing prosecutor, might financially benefit that person, his family, or business. Hunter, oh, that seems to fit. And according to Greg Jarrett, if Vice President Biden used his public office, VP, to influence or coerce a foreign official into taking official action that benefited Biden's son, and Biden has broken the law likely. And that's not all. Bribery, 18 U.S.C. 201C. Whoever corruptly gives, offers, promises anything of value, $1 billion, to a public official to influence an official act, fire him, is guilty of bribery. Fire the guy, you get $1 billion. Uh-oh again. How about the Gratuities Act, 18 U.S.C. 201B? Giving, offering, or promising anything of value to a public official, Ukraine, $1 billion, in exchange for any official act. Fire him, 6 hours. Whoops, looks bad. And look at the Hobbs Act, 18 U.S.C. 1951, a threat to a foreign official in order to obtain an official benefit affecting interstate or foreign commerce would constitute extortion. I'll let law enforcement do their jobs, but I think we now need an official criminal investigation opened here. This almost looks to me like a Biden criminal enterprise, but what do I know? I'm just a talk show host and a member of the press. Now, it might have something to do, I would have something to do with it if I were the prosecutor. There you have it. Biden, right at the top, the second most powerful person in the country. His son raking in millions of dollars from all over the world with no experience. The easy gig on the board of Burisma Holdings. No other American's going to get that deal. No other American's getting $1.5 billion private equity deal with the Bank of China with no experience. Maybe Deutsche Bank, Goldman Sachs. They might be more suitable candidates for such a deal with the Bank of China. And meanwhile, the media mob, the willing accomplices, stepping all over themselves, trying to protect the Bidens. Now, for years, they simply looked the other way, ignored this massive scandal, just like they always protected the Clintons. And for months now, they have been trying to cover it all up, telling, oh, it's all disproven conspiracy theories. No, there's no evidence of any wrongdoing. American people are smarter. Democrats on the Hill, even Biden's 2020 opponents, are doing everything in their power to protect Biden, all while launching a baseless witch hunt against Donald Trump, all surrounding the same country of Ukraine, and he didn't get anything. That's how morally bankrupt, that's how intellectually lazy, that's how compromised, that's how corrupt, and that's how hypocritical you have to be either a Democrat or part of the lying mob in the media. It only makes sense that their de facto leader is that guy, he is a corrupt, compromised, coward, and congenital liar. He's been lying to us for 3 years. His name, Adam Schiff. And a fake, phony, non-whistleblower, hearsay whistleblower, who's refusing to come out of the shadows, and he won't bring him in. Why? Because he had contact. He's compromised and a fact witness.